My name is Rana Younger, and I'm 28 years old. I wish I could tell you this is just another story about family disagreements, but it isn't. It's about the moment I finally realized that blood doesn't make someone safe, loyal, or loving. Sometimes it just makes them bold enough to hurt you and expect you to stay quiet. Growing up, my older sister Jenna was the star of the Younger family. Loud, dramatic, chronically irresponsible, but somehow always adored. I was the quiet one, the steady one. The one who didn't need rescuing, or so my parents liked to say. What they really meant was that Jenna required constant bailing out, and I didn't. When I finally bought my own house years later, a place so far from home I stopped worrying about unannounced visits, I swore this would be my reset button, my clean slate. I even told my parents and Jenna specifically that my new address was off limits. I was done being blindsided by their chaos. Meanwhile, Jenna's life was falling apart again, spectacularly. Her genius business idea, an event planning venture, had crashed and burned. Anyone who knew her disorganization saw that coming from a mile away. She ended up drowning in debt, borrowing money from friends, and drifting into rumors of questionable side hustles. I didn't have contact with her, but people talked, and whether I wanted to or not, I kept hearing pieces. Around that time, I'd just been featured on the cover of a regional business magazine. I had worked for it. Late nights, endless failures, rebuilding from scratch. And suddenly, my name was everywhere in the family grapevine. They were proud of me, I guess. Or maybe just surprised. But Jenna? If I knew her, and unfortunately I did, I knew that would feel like a slap to her ego. She always needed to be the special one. And then, 6 days ago, I came home and saw it. My house, my sanctuary, was covered in giant, hateful red graffiti. Words like fraud and loser splashed across my garage door, the front walls, the windows, even my carefully painted front door. Jagged letters, violent strokes, like whoever did it wasn't just vandalizing, but punishing. I froze on the driveway, keys hanging uselessly in my hand. I felt sick. My throat burned. This place was the one thing I'd built entirely on my own, and someone had violated it with deliberate cruelty. As I walked closer, I noticed the paint was still wet, dripping, fresh. Someone had been there minutes earlier. For a moment, I tried to tell myself it was random. Teenagers, a petty neighbor, anything but what my gut already whispered. Then I saw them, a faint trail of muddy footprints leading toward the sidewalk. Small footprints, a woman's. The whisper in my chest turned ice cold. I stormed inside, went straight to my home office, and pulled up the security camera footage. I had installed those cameras for peace of mind, never imagining they'd become the one thing standing between me and another buried family secret. My fingers shook as I scrubbed backward through the footage. And then she appeared. Jenna. Even with the hoodie, I'd recognize her posture anywhere. The hurried way she moved. The stupid little habit of glancing over her shoulder when she did something wrong. The camera caught just enough of her profile to remove any doubt. And then something else hit me. Hard. The way she wrote the graffiti. The messy, jagged letters. They looked exactly like the notes she used to slip under my door when we were kids. Nasty messages. Taunts. A signature chaos she thought she hid well. It was unmistakably hers. A direct attack, not an accident, not random. She wanted me to know it was her. My first instinct, call the police. But then reality kicked in. My father may be retired, but he still has friends in the department. Jenna has been shielded by those connections for years. Every time she messed up, every debt, every fight, every shady rumor, Dad made a call, and it disappeared like magic. I could already see the future. I'd report it. He'd intervene. Jenna would walk away laughing. I'd be told to keep it in the family. No, not this time. I grabbed my phone and documented everything. The front door, the walls, the windows, the dripping paint. I recorded myself describing the damage. I took screenshots of the footage and stitched it all together into one brutal, undeniable truth. My heart wasn't just racing, it was roaring. Years of being silenced collapsed into one decision. I posted everything online. I didn't say Jenna's name, I didn't need to. Anyone who knew us, even vaguely, would recognize her in those screenshots. My caption was simple. This is what happens when someone can't handle your success. The reaction was instant. Within hours, my post went viral. Hundreds of comments, support pouring in, people furious on my behalf, old classmates calling out Jenna's behavior, relatives who had always stayed neutral suddenly expressing shock, For the first time ever, I had leverage. And that was when my family struck. Jenna started messaging me. Fake apologies, desperate pleas, manipulations dressed up as guilt. Then my father called, furious, telling me to take the post down immediately because of what it was doing to Jenna's reputation. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask why I felt I needed to post it. He barked orders, like always. That evening, they all showed up at my house, Dad, Mom, and Jenna, pounding on the door. The moment I let them into my living room, the tension snapped. Dad exploded. He slammed his fist down on my coffee table so hard the wood split in half and collapsed. The room went dead silent. He glared at me, furious. Are you really going to sit there and do nothing? You're tearing this family apart. I looked at him and said nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that silence, my silence, terrified them more than yelling ever could. Rena, Mom whispered, please take it down. Do it for the family. No, I said calmly. Jenna made her choices. I won't shield her from the consequences anymore. Jenna's face twisted with rage. Dad stormed out. Mom followed. Jenna slammed the door behind her. I sat alone on the couch beside the broken table, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. The post kept spreading overnight. By morning, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Notifications, messages, tags, shares, reposts. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, shocked, furious, supportive. For once, the chaos in my life wasn't coming from my family. It was orbiting around Jenna instead. And honestly, it felt like oxygen after years of drowning. But the thing about airing truths is that it doesn't just open one wound. It exposes all the ones people thought they'd buried. The comments started digging deeper. Old classmates, former coworkers of Jenna's, friends she'd mistreated, people she'd borrowed money from and never repaid. And then the messages began. Raina, I'm so sorry. I always wondered why your parents let her get away with everything. She scammed me out of $600 back in college. Thank you for speaking up. I didn't want to say anything earlier, but Jenna used your dad's badge for more than just favors. Each new confession felt like someone turning on a light in a room I'd been forced to sit in the dark inside for years. Meanwhile, my boyfriend Evan had quietly shown up with coffee. He didn't lecture, he didn't question. He just sat next to me on the couch, warm and steady, letting me scroll through the tidal wave of support while he worked from his laptop beside me. His presence grounded me in a way my family never had. Steady, quiet, unsuffocating. I didn't say it aloud then, but it mattered. It mattered a lot. By noon, Jenna was unraveling. Her messages went from guilt-tripping to apology to rage to manipulation within minutes. You're blowing this out of proportion. Come on, we're sisters. Please delete it, please. Do you want to ruin my life? The last one made me stop. Jenna had been ruining her own life for years. I had simply stepped out of her way long enough to let her crash into herself. But things didn't escalate until her next move. She showed up at my house, banging, pounding, fists rattling the wooden panels hard enough to wake the neighbors. I opened the door and stood firmly in the doorway so she couldn't push her way inside. What do you want, Jenna? Her eyes were wild, puffy, frantic, furious. You know what I want. Take the post down. Not happening. She tried stepping around me. I didn't move. You've ruined everything, she screamed. My life, my reputation, my job prospects. I can't even go online without people attacking me. I held her stare. Did you care about my safety, my home, my life, when you vandalized it? She flinched, only for a second. You don't understand what I've been through, she spat. You're right, I don't, because you've never dealt with your consequences. And that's not my problem anymore. Her breath trembled. She glanced behind me, toward a ceramic flower pot on my console table as though she might throw it, break something, hurt something. Before she could even twitch, I stepped fully into the doorway. Don't. My voice was flat, dead calm, the kind of calm that comes after too many years of storms. Jenna froze. You think you're better than me, she said quietly, bitterly. You're sitting here in your perfect little house with your perfect little life, and everyone thinks you're some kind of martyr. I don't think I'm better than anyone, I said. I just stopped letting you hurt me. That was the moment she broke. You'll regret this, she hissed before storming off, slamming the gate behind her so hard the latch rattled. When I closed the door, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. This was who Jenna had always been, and this was who I had finally stopped letting her be to me. That night, Evan made dinner while I sat reading through the new comments on my post. The support was still pouring in. Even people who had never taken sides suddenly found their courage. But of course, not everyone was brave. My Aunt Linda called next. Her tone was clipped, heavy with fake concern. "Raina, your post is causing drama. Your parents are beside themselves." I stared at the wall. Of course she started with them. "And Jenna," she added, lowering her voice as if delivering a bombshell, "she's devastated." "She vandalized my home," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "She's lucky all she's facing is public accountability." "Well, I think you should take it down, for the sake of family peace." I let silence answer her for a moment. "Linda," I said calmly, "have you even watched the footage?" "I don't need to," she replied quickly. "Some things should stay private." There it was, the younger family motto. Hide the truth. Protect appearances. Silence the problems. Sacrifice the scapegoat. "Keeping this private is exactly why Jenna keeps doing things like this," I said. "I'm not taking it down." "You're being unreasonable," she snapped. "And you're enabling her," I replied, and ended the call. The house felt quiet after that. Too quiet. Evan looked over from the stove. "You okay?" "I will be," I said softly, and for the first time I meant it. But the calm didn't last. The next day, my uncle called, his voice strained, forced calm, stretched thin. "Raina, your dad's reputation is taking a hit. The department is getting heat. People are talking about the times he covered for Jenna." My heartbeat slowed, not from shock, from recognition. I had known this would come. "And?" I asked. "And they opened an internal review. Raina, your dad lost his job today." I sat still for a long moment. Not satisfied, not happy. Just finally seeing the truth settle where it belonged. My family had always taught me that silence preserved peace, but silence had only protected the person doing the damage. This time, the truth did exactly what it was supposed to do. It exposed everything. When news of my father's job loss hit the family, the silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match we'd ever had. For years, Dad's authority, his badge, his reputation, had been the family shield. Now it was gone. And suddenly, all the things they'd swept under that shield were exposed. I thought the fallout would stop there. But the truth has a strange way of multiplying once it's been unleashed. 2 days later, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Thank you for speaking up. Jenna scammed me 3 years ago. I was too scared to say anything because of your father." Then another. "She threatened me once, said her dad could make things disappear. I'm so glad someone finally stood up to her." Then more. Old neighbors, former co-workers, people I didn't even remember meeting. Each story was another crack in the picture-perfect illusion my parents had tried to maintain. The image shattered completely when a stranger publicly posted screenshots of a group chat where Jenna bragged about getting away with things because Dad still had friends in the department. That screenshot went viral. It was no longer just a family drama. It was a story about corruption, privilege, and years of abuse of power. And the avalanche finally landed where it always should have. On Jenna. 3 days later, police showed up at her apartment. Not to warn her, not to negotiate, not to ask for statements. To arrest her. My security footage alone would have been enough, but the reports flooded in after that screenshot went public. People she had scammed, people she'd threatened, people she owed money to, people she'd hurt. And then came the charges that blindsided even me. Drug possession, distribution suspicion, forgery accusations related to one of her failed business ventures. It turned out, the vandalism was just the smallest tip of a much darker iceberg. When I heard what she'd been hiding, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, because this whole time I had been convincing myself that Jenna was simply reckless, immature, jealous. But this was an entirely different level of destruction, and she had been enabled into it every step of the way. Court hearings began 2 months later. I didn't want to go, but I did. Not for her, for me. Closure isn't the moment you forgive someone. Sometimes it's the moment you finally stop believing they'll ever change. I sat quietly in the courtroom, hands folded in my lap. Evan sat beside me, grounding me with the steady brush of his arm against mine. Mom sat across the aisle, clutching tissues, breaking down in waves. Dad didn't look at me, not once. He looked at Jenna like a father watching his favorite child fall from grace. He still didn't seem to fully understand that he had pushed her off that cliff by never letting her hit bottom earlier. The judge's verdict was clear, decisive, and merciless. 4 years in prison, no parole, all charges upheld. Jenna's head snapped up. Her eyes searched the room in disbelief, like the world had finally betrayed her. When her gaze landed on me, something flickered across her face. Not remorse, not apology. Only the realization that I no longer had anything left for her to take. The bailiff motioned for her to stand. Her wrists were cuffed. My mother sobbed harder. Dad pressed his hands against his face. And I breathed. For the first time in 28 years, I breathed. Life didn't magically get easier after that. My parents went silent for a long time. I received one long, handwritten letter from my mom, pages of tears, and circular apologies. But even then, she never acknowledged the real problem. She was sorry things happened, but not sorry for how they happened. Dad didn't send anything. He never apologized. Maybe he couldn't. Losing his job, his standing, and the illusion of his perfect family had been too much for him to face. Some relatives tried to mend things. Others kept their distance. But for once, it didn't bother me. Because I finally understood something. Their silence was no longer my burden. It was their consequence. Meanwhile, my life kept moving. My business grew, ironically boosted by the visibility the scandal brought. People reached out asking for interviews, features, mentorship. I traveled more, took breaks, slept better. Evan became my anchor through all of it. Gentle but firm, knowing when to support and when to step back and let me stand on my own. His ex, Lydia, reached out once, trying to stir something, but Evan shut that down so fast it barely registered as drama. For the first time, my life wasn't defined by my family's chaos. It was defined by me. A year later, I found myself scrolling through my old post, the one that started everything. The video, the screenshots, the comments. I had kept it up intentionally, though I didn't need validation anymore. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder. The moment I stopped letting other people write my story. A moment that changed everything. I closed my laptop and let the quiet settle over me, warm and steady. The version of me who once stayed silent, who believed she had no right to defend herself, felt like a distant memory now. Someone I cared about, but someone I would never be again. Because growth isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's the quiet shift when you finally choose yourself over a lifetime of manipulation. Jenna, my parents, the fallout. They were chapters. Important, painful, necessary chapters. But only chapters. Not the whole book. I stood up, walked toward the window, and let the sunlight spill across my hands. Hands that once trembled from fear, now steady with resolve. For the first time, I whispered to myself, I am the author of my own story. And I wasn't afraid of the next page.